All right, welcome in. It's the Breer Report for April the 15th. We are laser focused now on the NFL draft. And to kick off our run up to the NFL draft, I wanted to do what I do several times over the course of the week plus leading up to the NFL draft, which is take you through some of the things you need to know about the teams at the top of the draft. And so what I figured we'd do today, in lieu of doing the normal three topics, is take you through the entire top 10 and what those teams need, where guys might be trending, just kind of give you an overview of where things are with 9 days to go until the NFL draft. Obviously, that starts with the Tennessee Titans at the top of the draft. We already have a great idea of what they're going to do. I wrote 8 days ago that they would take a historic offer to move them off the first pick, and that is because they are honed in on taking Miami quarterback Cam Ward with the first overall pick. He's checked every box over the course of the pre-draft process. The Titans have worked him out privately. They were at his pro day. They had him in for a 30 visit. They met with him at the combine. They've jumped through every hoop with Cam Ward. And what they see is a quarterback who's got the sort of ceiling that can help them chase the top teams in the AFC. And over time, over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years, they were looking for a quarterback that could help them get into that category, get in the club, so to speak, where the Chiefs are with Patrick Mahomes, where the Bills are with Josh Allen, where the Ravens are with Lamar Jackson, where the Bengals are with Joe Burrow, to a lesser degree, the Chargers with Justin Herbert, the Texans with C.J. Stroud. So what can get you there if you're the Titans? You need a guy with a high ceiling, and Cam Ward has the highest ceiling of any quarterback in this draft, and I think it's by a relatively large margin. So Cam Ward almost certainly will be the first overall pick in the NFL draft. He will be a Tennessee Titan in 9 days. We can move that to the side. The second pick, and this is where some of the intrigue starts. The Browns are sitting there at 2, and this feels like it's trending towards being the Heisman Trophy winner, Travis Hunter. I don't think Abdul Carter is completely out of it, but the tea leaf reading you can do here, it shows that Hunter could be the pick. Owner Jamie Haslam was in State College, Pennsylvania for a dinner with Abdul Carter. While they were at that dinner, J.W. Johnson, the EVP, was there. He's the son-in-law of Jimmy Haslam. General manager Andrew Berry was there. Kevin Stefanski, their head coach, was in Oxford, Mississippi to work out Jackson Dart, which kind of gives you some insight into how they're looking at gaming out the draft when you're talking about not just the second overall pick, but the range of picks that they have and what they could wind up doing in the second round. And so I don't think it would surprise anybody if they wind up with Hunter or Carter, and then on day 2, or even with a trade up back into round 1, they wind up with their quarterback of the future. But I think right now the smart money would say that this is Travis Hunter. You know, again, he went to dinner with the owner, and Shedeur Sanders was there, but from what I've heard, a lot of the focus at that dinner was on Travis Hunter and how they might use him as a Cleveland Brown and getting to know him before potentially taking him second overall. He would address not one but 2 needs for the Browns. The Browns do have a need at receiver. They have Jerry Jeudy there. They have Elijah Moore there. You know, Travis Hunter would be able to give them something maybe they don't have. I would say this Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith, Stephon Diggs type of receiver. And then they do have a needed corner as well. If you're looking at trying to put somebody opposite Denzel Ward, Ward has had his injury issues, so somebody that gives you some insurance there. If Hunter goes second overall, I think it becomes academic for the Giants. Now, they are going to work out Shedeur Sanders this week. I think, this is 2 things, that the Shedeur workout for the Giants is 2 things. Number one, it is part of their normal process when it comes to assessing quarterbacks, so that is not to be ignored. I think it's also, to some degree, ownership saying, if we are going to go elsewhere, if we are going to look at a position other than quarterback with the 3rd overall pick, let's be 100% sure that's the right thing to do. Remember, the last time they were picking in this range was 6 years ago, or 7 years ago now, in 2018, when they wound up taking Saquon Barkley 2nd overall. They didn't get that one wrong, but Josh Allen went 5 picks later, and there was some support for Josh Allen in the building at the time. So they want to make sure that they're sure that passing on Shedeur Sanders is the right thing to do. Ultimately, I think it will be for them. Ultimately, I think Abdul Carter winds up being the 3rd overall pick to the Giants. Again, We got 9 more days of phone calls to go, so I'm not etching that in stone. I'm writing in pencil right now. My guess would be Abdul Carter to the New York Giants at number 3. Number 4, the Patriots are are hoping that Carter or Hunter falls to them at 4. If that does not happen, I do think that this is a pick that the Patriots can't get wrong, and it's one where you look at it and you say, do you go and take your swing and try to get an elite player and somebody who has some elite traits, and maybe that's Jalen Walker from Georgia, who would address a need for them and sort of being that hybrid linebacker edge rusher type, or do you go and you take care of your quarterback with somebody like Will Campbell here? Again, that's absent Hunter or Carter falling to them, where I think the decision sort of would already be made if one of those two guys fall to them. Ultimately, my guess right now would be Will Campbell, but I think both those guys would be in play. Will Campbell feels to me like a little bit more of a fit than Armand Membu. I think both Will Campbell and Jalen Walker would be outstanding fits for Mike Vrabel's system and for Mike Vrabel's program. Will Campbell, I had someone joke with me that Vrabel would ask him to move into his house if they drafted him. And Jalen Walker, I heard him described as almost a defensive coordinator in his meetings with teams. So both those guys would be fits for the Patriots. But the left tackle is the crying need for that. At 5, the Jaguars. That there's one player that makes all the sense in the world for the Jaguars here. And especially when you consider where the new guys in charge, Liam Cohen and James Gladstone, are coming from, where their background is in the NFL is with the Rams. They were with Aaron Donald. This feels to me like it's a Mason Graham. And if it's not Mason Graham, maybe they try to move out. I think it's going to be very difficult to move down in this year's draft based on the makeup of the draft class. But Mason Graham makes a ton of sense. He fills a need. He'd be a culture fit for what they're looking to build there. And, I think it's one of those ones where you look at him and you say, at the very least, you're going to get a pretty good player. Is he going to be all pro? Maybe, maybe not. But, he would make a ton of sense there at number 5 overall for the Jaguars. The Raiders at 6, a lot of buzz that Ashton Jeanty is high on their list. I think there is some dot connecting that's going on there within NFL circles where teams are looking at it and seeing Pete Carroll and saying, all right, he invested in running backs in the past. Recently drafted Kenneth Walker really high. That worked out. Had drafted Rashad Penny in the first round. Invested pretty deeply over the years in Marshawn Lynch when he was in Seattle. Go get your bell cow. Help out Geno Smith. Help out an offensive line. And then you go and you get a piece there where we are getting an elite player here. You're getting a player, if you take positional value out of it, that might be on the same level as a Hunter or a Carter. I'm not positive that's the way they go, because I look at Pete Carroll's history. I look at what he's looked for in players in the past. I look at how he built his team in Seattle and the investment they made over the years in defensive linemen. Then I look at the general manager there, John Spytek, coming over from the Buccaneers. He's got Eagles background, so he's a line of scrimmage guy too, and building inside out. So it wouldn't surprise me if you see an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman here. Could be a Mason Graham, could be a Mikael Williams, could be a Jalen Carter, could be a Will Campbell, could be an Armand Membu. It would not surprise me if it's an offensive or defensive lineman. Again, I'm not ruling Ashton Jeanty out. I'm just saying it's too early for me right now to say I think Genty's the pick. At number 7 overall, the New York Jets. I would be surprised if the Jets took a quarterback 7th overall. My guess right now, if I had to pick 2 players out of the pack, would be Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. He's a fantastic player. He's got a little bit of a Rob Gronkowski to his game, at least in the passing game. And then potentially a right tackle solution in Armand Membu. I think those 2 guys are guys that make the most sense. If you draft Tyler Warren, you're giving Justin Fields another weapon. You're taking some of the pressure off of Garrett Wilson. You're adding a guy who some people feel like is in that elite tier of players, is one of the guys that has a chance to become a real blue chip player as a pro. There aren't very many of them in this year's draft. With Membu, now you've got your tackle position maybe taken care of for the next decade if things work out, with Olu Fashanu at left tackle and Membu at right tackle. I think either of those picks would be sound. One name that I think is sort of interesting here if there's a curveball, And I think this is too high for him. But if there's a curveball, it's been pointed out to me how good a fit Jedi Barron, the defensive back from Texas, would be for Aaron Glenn's system. So that's one I would file away if they were able to trade down somehow. Maybe Barron is somebody that comes on the radar for him, and I like the idea of that there. And then number 8, the Carolina Panthers. This feels to me like potentially the floor for Jalen Walker. The defense was really bad last year. And while I do think you could get more help for Bryce Young here, the way I look at it is you got to get Ejiro Evero some difference-making players, and he needs playmakers on defense. And you've taken care of J.C. Horn at corner now. I think you want to add a difference maker to your front, somebody who can wreak havoc and be a problem for offenses. And all you got to do is watch 5 minutes of Jalen Walker to see the type of player he can be. So I think Jalen Walker from Georgia probably goes somewhere between the 4th overall pick and the 8th overall pick. And right now it feels to me like you'd be looking at it and saying, okay, like this is the type of player you've got that can be a real difference maker for you with the 8th overall pick. At 9, the New Orleans Saints. I know a lot of people have earmarked this for a quarterback. I'm not saying it won't be a quarterback. If it is a quarterback, again, this could be another curveball. I've heard they've done a ton of work on Jackson Dart, the Ole Miss quarterback. Again, I'm not saying that it's going to be Jackson Dart. I think maybe it's more likely that they try to get Jackson Dart later on, but that's a name to file away as somebody the Saints have done a lot of homework on. If they do stick at 9 and they do go away from the quarterback position, this is another place where I think you could see a defensive end and somebody who could eventually replace Cam Jordan. So a couple names that I would mention there. I don't think Jalen Walker makes it there. Mikael Williams, really clean character. He looks like he was built in a lab to play defensive end. Didn't have the production in college. So that's one thing you kind of have to wrap your head around. And there were some injuries that played into that, but you'd be projecting a bit with him. But Mikael Williams is somebody to keep an eye on. Shamar Stewart, another traits guy, a big, strong, physical defensive end who you'd hope has his best football ahead of him based on the production in college. And then maybe a wild card, if you're looking for a hybrid, would be Jihad Campbell from Alabama. But I think that defensive end position is one that they could take care of there at 9th overall and maybe double back in the 2nd round. Maybe they move up a little bit to try to get Jackson Dart. Finally, at number 10, you've got the Chicago Bears. They're another team that's been linked to Genty. Makes some sense. If you look at Ben Johnson's background in Detroit, they were able to get a lot out of a running back they took in the 1st round in Jahmyr Gibbs. This is a little bit different in that Ashton Genty is a little bit more of a bell cow, not quite the home run threat that Jahmyr Gibbs is, but a damn good player. And so I think that's certainly possible. The other position I keep a close eye on for the Bears would be offensive tackle. I think that is a spot where Braxton Jones, their left tackle, is going into a contract year. They haven't extended him. Darnell Wright still hasn't lived up to expectations. I think they're going to give him some runway to make that happen at right tackle. But given how much they've already invested in the offensive line and trading for Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson and signing Drew Dahlman, that could be the floor for Will Campbell. I don't know if Membu's quite as much of a fit because he's more of a right tackle than a left tackle, but offensive tackle is something they could take care of. And then I think defensive tackle is another one. That, to me, is the floor for Mason Graham. I don't think Mason Graham makes it past there. So that's your top 10, 1 through 10. We will go through it several times over the next 9 days. I've still got a lot of phone calls to make, but I love this time of year. You can keep checking back with us online at themmqb.com. You can keep checking back with us on YouTube. We'll have more of these Breer reports coming. I'm going to do a mailbag for you guys here on Thursday so I can get to a lot of your questions there. We'll get to more of your questions in the print mailbag, of course. And then we're really going to ramp it up next week. So looking forward to bringing you guys a ton of draft content here in the run up to the 2025 draft, which is April 14th, kicks off April 14th in Green Bay. Keep it locked here. We got a lot more coming.